Today, we're diving into the haunting story of the Radium Girls. It's a story of glamour, poison, and a fight for justice that, believe it or not, changed America forever.
I want you to picture this. It's the 1920s. Young women are walking home from their factory jobs, and they are literally glowing. Luminous dust is shimmering on their clothes, and when they smile, their teeth sparkle in the dark. They were called the Ghost Girls, and it was actually a mark of prestige. They'd wear their best dresses to work, just so the fabric would shine on the walk home. Some even playfully painted the glowing substance onto their teeth for a radiant smile. They had no idea, absolutely no clue, that this beautiful, ethereal glow was actually a death sentence.
Because the price for that glow, it was absolutely horrific. The first sign was usually just a toothache, but then the teeth would start to fall out at the slightest touch. The pain would become unbearable, and then came the condition doctors would eventually name radium necrosis, or radium jaw. Their jaw bones would become honeycombed, brittle. They would just crumble away. For one of the first women to die, Molly Maggia, her entire jaw had to be removed before she finally passed away in agony. This wasn't just an illness, it was a living nightmare.
So you have to be asking, how on earth did this happen? To really understand the tragedy, we have to rewind a bit to a time when radium wasn't seen as a poison, it was seen as a miracle. They called it liquid sunshine, a cure for, well, everything.
It all starts back in 1898, right after the Curies discovered it. Radium became the most expensive substance on Earth, and in America, a full-blown craze just exploded. Companies took advantage of the fact that there were basically no regulations and sold radium-laced everything to the public. Water that glowed, face creams, even butter. It was sold as this magical element, and the United States Radium Corporation, or USRC, was right at the heart of this whole boom, making luminous watch dials for the military and for regular people.
Okay, now this is where the story gets really disturbing, because you might think, well, nobody knew the dangers back then. But that's just not true. The public might have been in the dark, but the company leadership? No way. They knew. The founder, Dr. von Sochaki, had studied with the Curies. He knew the risks. Pierre Curie himself had warned that radium could burn skin and kill you. Von Sochaki even suffered from radium poisoning himself and had to amputate his own finger. Let that sink in. They knew.
And yet, knowing all of this, they opened their factories and hired hundreds of young women for what seemed like the job of a lifetime, deliberately putting them right in harm's way.
You really have to understand why these jobs were such a huge deal. Many of these workers were young, some just 14 years old, often from immigrant families with not a lot of money or education. This job offered them incredible financial freedom. The pay was fantastic, putting them in the top 5% of female wage earners in the entire country. And it was clean, detailed work, a world away from the other grueling factories. It felt like an artist's job, and the women were really proud of it.
So here it is. This is the crucial point, how they were poisoned. They were taught a technique called lip pointing. To get the brush tip perfectly fine for the tiny watch numerals, they were told to put it between their lips and use their tongue to shape it. A little dip, a little lick, a little paint. They did this hundreds and hundreds of times a day, swallowing a small dose of radium with every single watch. And why? Well, radium was worth more than gold, and rinsing the brushes in water would waste precious particles.
And they asked about it. They weren't naive. As former dial painter May Cubbery Canfield remembered, they asked directly if the paint was harmful. And the company lied. They were told it was perfectly safe. One boss even joked that if anything, the radium might be good for them. Put a rosy glow in their cheeks. They were told not to be afraid.
And this right here, this just illustrates the depth of the deception. On one side, you've got the female dial painters, no protective gear, instructed to ingest radium, working in rooms where the air was thick with radium dust. On the other side, the male lab workers and executives who handled radium in bulk. They were given lead-lined aprons and ivory-tipped forceps to protect themselves. The men and women were even kept in separate areas of the factory to make sure the women never saw the precautions the men were taking. This was not an oversight. It was a calculated, gendered choice.
And so the girls just embraced their luminous lives. The Ghost Girls became local celebrities. The dust was everywhere, in the air, on their clothes, in their hair. They'd go to dances after work, their glowing dresses turning heads. They had no idea this beautiful side effect was the very thing that was embedding itself in their bones, slowly destroying them from the inside out.
But that dream job couldn't last. As the women's bodies began to break down, the company didn't rush to help.
Instead, they began to build a wall of lies. The cover-up was systematic. When Molly Magia died in 1922, a company-friendly doctor listed the cause of death as syphilis, a diagnosis designed not only to hide the link to her job, but to smear her reputation. A chemist hired by the Department of Labor confirmed the paint was the cause, but no action was taken. The USRC even commissioned its own secret study, which confirmed the devastating health effects of radium. Their response? They buried the report and continued to deny any responsibility.
But the women refused to be silenced. As their health failed and their time was running out, they began a fight for justice that would capture the nation's attention, fighting not just for themselves, but for every worker who would come after them. The turning point came with Dr. Harrison Martland. He was an honest county medical examiner who refused to be intimidated by this powerful corporation. He conducted tests and proved, for the first time, that the women's bodies were saturated with radioactivity. He gave their suffering a name, radium necrosis, and with that diagnosis, he gave them the scientific proof they needed to take their case to court.
But the fight was almost impossible. The system was completely stacked against them. The statute of limitations for workplace injuries was just a few months, but radium poisoning took years to manifest. It wasn't even listed as a compensable disease. The company hired doctors to lie, and because it was the Great Depression, many in their own communities turned against them, calling them traitors for suing one of the only companies still providing jobs. By the time their case made it to court, the women were so sick, some had to be carried in and were too weak to even raise their hands to take the oath. They became known in the press as the 5 women doomed to die. And though most of them wouldn't live long enough to see it, their courageous struggle created a legacy that echoes to this day.
I mean, just look at the impact they had. Their case established landmark legal precedents, like the right for individual workers to sue corporations for getting sick at work. Their fight led directly to stronger worker safety rules and eventually to the creation of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Their bodies, even in death, became crucial to science, providing invaluable data on the effects of radioactivity that helped set safety standards for generations to come. And the poison they worked with? It still lingers. The factory site in Illinois is now a federal Superfund site, one of the most radioactively contaminated places in the country.
Here's a thought that'll stick with you. Radium has a half-life of 1,600 years. The bones of the Radium Girls, buried nearly a century ago, are still radioactive today. They will be for more than 1,000 years to come. Their story is a chilling reminder of the human cost of corporate greed, but it's also this powerful testament to a group of ordinary women whose fight from the grave forced a nation to value the health and safety of its workers. And it leaves us with a question. What injustices in our own time demand that same courage?